everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Gia. I am a 26-year-old lady who lives in my mom's basement, and today is part of the reshoot of the August wrap-up. I recorded the wrap-up a couple of days ago, and I had some really bad audio issues for about half of the recording, and I tried to cut it down as much as possible to only be like the vital information about each book and my thoughts on them, but it was about 13 out of 35 minutes that were sounding not great, and I would rather re-record and re-edit my thoughts than have you have to put up with all of that. For the benefit of my watch time, here is again the 7 books that I read in August, starting with A Botanist's Guide to Flowers and Fatality. This picks up where we last left off with A Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons with Saffron in her botany department. She has gotten her own office, and now she has somebody who works with her in her office who is a medical doctor. Her dearly beloved Alexander is in the Amazon rainforest right now, and he's like swearing that he'll bring all of these plants back to her, which is really cute. And she spends a lot of the book thinking about him. The plot of this story is that the police are going to Saffron because there are murders that are happening all around the city, but there are bouquets of flowers being delivered to the murder victims prior to their deaths, and all of the bouquets are different, and they believe that it might have something to do with floriography, which is the language of flowers. And because Saffron is a botanist, they are going to her to kind of deconstruct and decrypt the messages in the bouquets as they are trying to figure out what message was the killer trying to send as to why they were murdering them, and also trying to figure out the identity of the killer themselves. I love floriography. It's one of those things that I would love to learn more about if I had the time. I get a good giggle when I read about people who lived in the Victorian times because they all had several niche interests. Like back when you had the security of having a job or having an inheritance, that you could have a avid bird watching hobby or something like completely unrelated to what you do for a living, I think is so funny. Floriography is just one of those things where if I had a job where I was comfortable enough to not have a hobby that I am incentivized to monetize in any way, that is one of the things that I would be interested in, to be honest. The book before, I had some issues with the pacing, but other than that, I really did like the book, and I was actually pleasantly surprised to rate this book higher than I did the first one, so this is a rare instance of a sequel being better than its predecessor, in my opinion. Sometimes that doesn't happen for me. This was a pleasant surprise, and I am looking forward to the next installment, and I'm hoping that we get more Saffron and Alexander in the next book, because we didn't really get a lot of them, but we are led to believe that there will be a third book because there are some loose ends going on with that little low stakes romance. The next book that I read is the first book in a very long video series that I will be producing over the next couple of weeks, and I picked a really good book to start with. So I read A Fate of Wrath and Flame, and what I really enjoyed about this book is not just the story itself, but I really enjoyed the way that exposition was delivered to us as the reader. In this book, we meet Romy. She is a thief who low-key works for the New York Mafia, and in this world, there is like an alternate magical world where there are magical creatures that exist, but people consider them to be demons, or they're a figment of their imagination. This does exist in their world. It's not like an alternate dimension or like a different planet or something. In a way, it's kind of like Shadowhunters, where you see it if you have the ability to, but other than that, you can go about your life not knowing that it's there. Romy meets a sorceress who gives her very little choice in the matter, but tells her that she is instructed to steal an item from somewhere in the magical part of this world. And again, Romy is not given much of a choice. Romy wakes up in the body of herself, but not herself. This is Princess Romeria, who is basically Romy's evil twin in a magical dimension. And Princess Romeria just murdered her future in-laws. Oops. So now you have Romy in the body of Princess Romeria, her evil twin, and they kind of have her on lockdown as they're trying to figure out like how, why, and who helped Romeria kill her future in-laws. So they don't know that Romeria is not herself. So instead, Romy pretends to be Princess Romeria, but with amnesia, because she doesn't know anything. Romy doesn't know anything about this world or what's going on in it. The supporting cast, who is responsible for giving us the exposition of this world, treat it as though they are reminding Romeria of everything that's gone on around her, and the politics of everything that goes on around them, where she's from, and all the magic and stuff, because she again, doesn't remember anything, but it's actually Romy, who is a different consciousness inside her evil twin that is learning firsthand about the world around her, which I thought was a very interesting way to go about narration and exposition, which was quite refreshing because I get tired of fantasies exposition dumping on you by either the comic relief or the wise sage character. And then because this book is part of a long-term project that I have been planning for quite some time that I'm just now starting casually, I'm not very, very strict about any deadlines or anything, but I had forgotten what the synopsis of the book was. So I was shocked when there was the, oh my god, there's vampires here too twist. So the whole like fae and vampires being around in the world was news to Romy, and it was news to me, bitch, because I did not see it coming. I went, oh my god, there's vampires here too. Basically what I'm saying is that the love interest, being fae and vampire, has to have like a massive wingspan, if you know what I mean. I rated the book 4.5 stars, and I will be continuing the series, which again I will be talking about in the video that I am producing that this book is a part of. So I'm gonna like shut up about it now because it's kind of a genius idea that I'm really excited about. Just a tone switch completely, the next book that I read was a disappointment. The experience of reading The Librarian of Crooked Lane by C.J. Archer is what I would compare to the difference between reading something at 3x speed and listening to something at 3x speed. Because when I'm listening to something at 3x speed, I am still hearing all of the words. But when you're reading at that speed, you're missing a lot of words in between. My issue with this book is that I feel like the author didn't get all the words down on the page, or that they were missing scenes or missing chapters entirely, because I honestly got to the point at the end of the book where I didn't even know what exactly happened. The writing was very juvenile and disappointing. I found the love interest Gabriel to be as interesting as a piece of white toast. Unfortunately, he was just not that compelling or interesting, and I didn't find Sylvia to be that much better. The book takes place loosely around World War I, as it's implied, with Sylvia being a librarian. She has gotten this job despite battling sexism because all of the men have been gone in the war and now they're all coming back. So there is a very strong theme of sexism and misogyny that now that the men are back from the war, the women need to go back to doing what they were doing before, essentially, and give the men all the jobs back. So Sylvia experiences a lot of misogyny, and she is employed as a librarian by this dude who is horrible to her. There is a soft magic system in this book where, you know, how they have elemental magic systems. This is a magic system that was based on component parts. So if you have a painting, this book has to deal with an art heist. If you have a painting, you have a paint magician, a canvas magician, an ink magician, you see where I'm going with this. Everything is broken down to its component parts. So if you needed to bake a pie, as if this were Breath of the Wild, you would have a magician who specializes in the apple, the pie crust, the sugar, and the cinnamon, essentially. It was a very interesting attempt at a soft magic system, but it didn't really make a lot of sense. Sylvia is again a librarian. She just lost her brother in the war, and her mother has been gone as well, but she doesn't know her family background, and she, with the aid of her brother's diary, is led to believe that she may be descended from silver magicians, which are very rare, very powerful, and very necessary. So she wants to know a bit more about her family background, and using her brother's diary, again her brother who just died, she finds a name in her brother's diary, and this leads her to the son of the person mentioned in the diary, the son being the love interest Gabriel, who is a rich veteran who just came back from the war. He's experiencing a lot of media attention because he did like come back from the war, and after being on the front lines of a lot of the war, and he came back unharmed, and then he did a heroic action in which he saved a boy from drowning, I think. But she meets Gabriel and asks him to help her, and I don't know why he agrees, because he's not inclined to. It's just he decides, okay, just to be goofy, that he's gonna try to help her out. He makes her lose her job, and then they end up discovering that a art piece at a museum potentially got stolen. But this is where we get to the part of the book where I get confused as to what happened in its entirety. So Sylvia meets Gabriel. Gabriel makes Sylvia lose her job. Gabriel gets Sylvia a job temporarily at an art gallery. Sylvia notices something is wrong with the painting. Painting goes missing, question mark. It's never quite clear as to the painting goes missing or the painting is a fake. Like I was like, okay, is it missing, or is it like that episode on Sherlock where Sherlock was able to tell that a painting was fake and stolen because there was something painted in the sky that was a meteorological event that happened in the future, and therefore the painting that was fake was made in the future, so it was, a copy. So I was like, is it like that? It wasn't very clear as to what was going on, and I was extremely confused as to what the actual plot of the book was. I felt like that sensation when you're speed reading and you're skipping over words, or you're only reading every third word, or say you're reading a sentence in a language you don't know, but you slightly recognize some of the words, so you're able to read every third word or fourth word, and then using context clues can figure out what the sentence is about. That's what that was, that vibe, but I didn't know what was going on the entire time. Overall, I found the narration very difficult, and I found the writing to be juvenile. I found the entire book itself to be extremely hollow, and I did not vibe with it. I was very, very disappointed. You know me. I love books that center on libraries, on colleges, on museums. Like, I expected this to be my vibe, and it wasn't. So, unfortunately, it did go into the 2-star range for me, and I will not be continuing the series, unfortunately. Okay, so for consistency purposes, I did wear this sweater for the reshoot, but you're gonna see my hair different in the next scene, and that will be Gia of the Past. So, take it away, Gia of the Past. The next book that I read was The Witcher: The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is the first book chronologically in the Witcher series. This is actually considered a prequel that is all full of short stories. I recognized all of the short stories from the show, so this was a very easy, breezy 4.5-star read for me. All of the stories that were in The Last Wish were in either seasons 1 or 2 of The Witcher, which I have seen up to that point. I haven't watched season 3 yet. I don't want to be sad when I see Henry Cavill as Geralt for the very last time, because he is my Geralt, and I know that that's not an uncommon thing to be sad about, but I'm really sad that they mistreated Henry Cavill. Ma'am? Hello? I think she smells the used bookstore on the books, and thus she must investigate. Or it's the smell of the library. I don't know. Multiple people have touched those books, is what I'm saying. The book itself is just a collection of short stories. I don't remember what all of them are in order, so I am going to be referring to a Goodreads review that is right next to me that summarizes them, and I can kind of see what they're about. The first one is more turned into a general theme of the Witcher show, in which Geralt is constantly having to deal with the fact that everything that he does is for a price, and yet at the same time, the common folk treat him like shit. They consider him a monster, but it's like a necessary monster. They go to him for all of their problems. A glorified security agent or a glorified mercenary that is sent out to kill undesirables. A big theme of the Witcher games, at least in the first and second ones, because I've played all of the first one and part of the second one, but a big theme is about how Geralt has to come to terms with his like moral code of neutrality, where he doesn't pick sides in conflict. Later on, when he sees how terribly elves get treated, how poorly dwarves get treated, how poorly anybody that is considered not human, how badly that they're treated. People treat him just as bad, but they deal with him more than others because he's a necessary part of their life, because he is pest control. It's an allegory for how minorities are treated. The Voice of Reason, which is the first short story, is about how Geralt is talking about, the things he has to go through and the things he has to deal with in order to get by, which again is turned more into a general theme into the show itself. But this is a very short story at the beginning of the book. The second short story, called The Witcher, is about Geralt defeating a Striga, which we saw in season 1 with King Foltest having an incestuous relationship with his sister that resulted in the birth of a daughter, and the sister and the daughter both died in childbirth, but there was a curse that was placed on the sister, and thus the child grew to be a monster after sitting in the crypt for a very long time, and is believed to be a werewolf, but is actually a Striga. This is about Geralt breaking the curse on the Striga, who then becomes a regular girl by the end of the story. The next story is A Grain of Truth, which is about Nivilian and the Bruxa that he falls in love with. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. In the show, it's a friend, but in the book, it's not a friend. It's just some random dude that he comes across. But Geralt comes across a dilapidated mansion. The person who owns the mansion is a half beast, half man named Navillion, who was placed under a curse some time ago, and he has some magical abilities, but people don't like to stick around him too much. There are dead bodies that are popping up all over town, and all of the surrounding villages are now deserted. So Geralt is lured to this location because he's like, why is everybody either gone or dead? And he comes across this mansion that is housed by a half beast, half man, and turns out he has a little minor vampire living in his mansion that he has fallen in love with. She's a Bruxa, and things have to be done in order to solve the little vampire problem. It's literally a Beauty and the Beast retelling. The next short story is The Lesser Evil. This is the first story that was told in the Witcher series, in which Geralt goes to a town where he meets a mage that he has known before, and he's asked to take care of a monster, the monster being a 16-year-old girl. There was a lunar event that caused women to become pregnant and then spawned monsters, as in they were regular girls, but there were fundamental things different about them, like they had an extra heart, or they had a violent disposition or something. Either way, they were considered different and wrong, and this mage is sending Geralt to deal with her. But the thing is that when he meets this person, they have a little bit of a discussion where he kind of realizes that the thing that he was sent to kill is a person with thoughts and feelings and emotions, and he's stuck in his little mode of neutrality where he's like, is it the lesser of two evils to dispose of this person who might do untold harm to the community, because we know that other girls like her have done so? And Geralt tries to answer this question of what he believes is truly evil, whether it's the person or what the person believes that they are, whether it's like the person or the machinations of the person. I believe this is also where we get the background on Geralt being called the Butcher of Blaviken, Blaviken being the village where all of this took place, because Geralt told the girl, either stand down or I will kill you, even though she is bent on revenge. And he's like, I don't want to believe that you're as bad as you're being presented to me as. I want to believe that you can be a person capable of being good. But she proves him wrong, and he picks the wrong evil, so he is forced to take her down and put her down like Old Yeller. Unfortunately, other people get caught in the crossfire, and this ends up getting turned on Geralt. I believe this is where we get that background on Geralt being the Butcher of Blaviken, which is why he's not welcome in certain places, is because he's gotten kind of a bad rap, even though he was sent to kill this person, and then the entire situation got blamed on him. Basically, it's just character development for Geralt, where he learns once again that he needs to learn how to choose a side, and that not every battle can be truly neutral. The next short story is about how Ciri became Geralt's adopted daughter. It was all about the background of Queen Calanthe inviting Geralt to the party to basically root out somebody that she didn't want there. And then through magic and the law of surprise, Geralt ends up with a surprise adopted daughter. That's it. That's the story. It's literally the episode in the TV show. Again, another short story that is like the TV show. It is called The Edge of the World. This is the one where they found the devil in the grains, and the devil was actually stealing grains and food for elves that were on the run, including a lost prince. And this is another situation where Geralt is kind of forced to confront the fact that people are being mistreated by humans, obviously unfairly, where he has to be like, well, you did these bad things too. And the elves go, well, they did bad things first. And Geralt goes, oh my God, you're right. And then the last one is the longest one, but it is again just like the episode from the TV show. Just watch the TV show instead of reading this book. If you don't want to read slightly misogynistic fantasy read from the perspective of a middle-aged man in the 1990s, if that describing that is not your vibe, then don't. This book is definitely giving women written by men, specifically teenagers written by men, so do with that with what you will. I honestly just took it with a massive grain of salt, because there are game and Netflix adaptations that do a bit of a modernization, because this was written in 1993. Frankly, I'm not shocked that a book that is older than I am has fantasy racism and fantasy sexism. Maybe it's because I'm coming at it with experience with the video games and the TV show, which I both love very, very much, and I am just intrigued by this universe. I haven't been this intrigued and interested in a fantasy universe since Game of Thrones. which also is problematic in its own ways. The series is not without fault. In fact, most fantasies are not without fault because most of them have fantasy sexism and fantasy racism. So much to the point where you're like happily surprised when there is no fantasy sexism or racism. So some people are willing to deal with that and some people are not. It's all about what you're willing to deal with. If that crosses the line for you, I completely understand. I babbled about what the short stories were for about 25 minutes, but basically what I'm going to tell you is just to watch the TV show. Literally, just watch the first 2 seasons of the TV show and you will absorb every short story that is in this, and they are done pretty accurately. It was a 4.5 for me. I chose to listen to this on audio because it is a translation and I wanted to hear all of the pronunciations correctly because I have a really bad habit of if I don't know how to pronounce a word, I will just skip over it. So I wanted to actually hear the words as they should be pronounced. After this, I was kind of behind on my reading goals. I was like permanently one book behind in the story graph. So I said, you know what? I'm going to pick up contemporary smut because what else is a bitch that's behind on her reading goals supposed to do other than to pick up the easiest shit to read within an afternoon? So I picked up The Wrong Bride by Katharina Miura, or at least I think that I pronounced that correctly. What I was trying to go for was reading books that have been in my Kindle Unlimited library for a abnormal amount of time, like they've been sitting there as loans for over a year. Sorry. I decided to pick this book up. It is Rich People Problems. This book is literally the Kardashians as a telenovela. Like it's giving rich people problems. It's giving champagne problems. I will say upfront, this is 18 plus contemporary romance. If you are interested in men who beg on their fucking knees, this is for you. If you're into that, even when it's cheesy, this is for you. So this book is about our girl Raven. She is basically Kendall Jenner in this universe. She's one of the highest paid, or if not the highest paid supermodel of this time. Her sister is female Timothy Chalamet, in which she is just slaying all of the awards. She is in every movie. She is like Jennifer Lawrence and Timothy Chalamet put together. She is in everything. She is the moment. She is at the height of her acting career, and she is getting all of the awards. Hannah, the sister, has been dating slash engaged to Aries. Aries' family is the Windsors, which is extremely royal. They are a multi-billion-dollar media company in which it's one of those books where all the siblings are involved in the business and they all do something very different, but you know every sibling's gonna get their own book. Aries is the brother that's in charge of all the journalism. Like he's basically Jeff Bezos owning the Washington Post and the Huffington Post and all that. He's in charge of all the media. So Aries is involved with marketing and journalism, but also the movies. So he does a little bit of both. He basically made it easy for Hannah to get all the roles that she wanted because he would put funding into all the movies that she wanted to do, and he supported all of her goals. But she keeps pushing the brakes on getting married because she doesn't want to give up her career because there's like a contract that they have to follow where they can't be apart for more than 3 days and they have to follow certain rules because it's an arranged marriage between two families and basically two companies that are trying to have like an arranged marriage, but they're lucky because it's a marriage of love anyway. But because it's an arranged marriage, it has to happen. So when Hannah gets cold feet once more because she doesn't want to give up her acting career, her sister has to step in. Her sister, who is like the highest paid supermodel in the world, now has to marry her sister's ex-fiance that she's been in love with for years in order to save the family, like the family merger coming together, because if she doesn't marry into this family, her family will go broke, like Schitt's Creek broke. She's kind of in a rough situation where she's like, I don't want to take my sister's place and be married to somebody who always wished that I was somebody else. And then the sister just underestimates everything because she's like, they're not going to make you marry him. Like they love me so much. They'll just wait for me to be ready to marry him. What's another year or two? And then when they actually marry Raven and Aries together, she's like, oh my God, like I can't believe that they would do such a thing. I thought that they would like push the wedding off, but oh my God, they made you marry him. I didn't think that they would make you do it, even though it was a contract. The sister is stupid and also fucking evil because she then proceeds to make Raven and Aries' life a living hell after that. And Raven and Aries are like kind of in their honeymoon sleigh where they're actually realizing that they might work as a couple because it starts out as like a business arrangement and then they're like, actually, maybe we can make this work. And then the sister keeps trying to poke her head in and cause some trouble. It's very telenovela vibes. It's very overdramatic. It's very overblown. Every chapter has a love declaration that's like this many paragraphs long. I kind of lived and breathed for it. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of ate the shit up and I rated it 4 stars. I don't know. It was just something that I needed to fill my soul. Like sometimes I just read so much fantasy. The sex scenes were B plus. I mean, there wasn't really much more I was asking for. It didn't like shift my whole idea of what love is or anything. It was fun. It was goofy. It was a nice little time. I liked how dramatic it was. The next book that I read was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which I'm not going to go too deep into talking about because it's a very popular pick on BookTube and Book Talk. I rated the book 4 stars. It honestly just felt like a warm hug, but I did struggle to get through with the pacing, even though it wasn't that long. It was only a 10-hour audiobook. I am just so used to reading books that have the universe will explode if we don't like solve this mystery kind of tension in books. I'm very used to that kind of high tension, high drama. The world will shift and explode as we know it. I'm very more used to that, which is more common in fantasy. This is very like low energy, low drama, low tension. This is kind of in the same way that some people prefer contemporary romance with very low stakes. Like there's just like a text misunderstanding and that's the main plot of the story. I would say that this kind of feels like that as a fantasy because it was just very, very low drama. There was low stakes. I guess I was just kind of waiting for the stakes to be increased and they weren't until like the very end where it got a little bit interesting. The twist at like the 80% mark was kind of shocking actually. Honestly, have very little to complain about the book otherwise. So with that being said, for a low drama fantasy with very low stakes, this is a 4 star read. It feels like a warm hug with a cup of tea and a blanket. Honestly, it's a really heartwarming story. I think that the hype for this book is very well deserved as a book that is marketed as like a cozy fantasy. I think that that is a very fair description of the book. I'm going to keep my bitching to a minimum because it is getting late, but this was the last book that I read in August and it was a sore disappointment. But Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I rated this 2 stars. I did not like this at all. I did not vibe with the writing. I did not like the world building. It felt very hollow. And I know that some people say that you should read Caraval before you read Once Upon a Broken Heart, but then other people say you don't have to. There's very confusing instructions as to how to go about reading this book because I did not read Caraval. And I'll tell you why. Because I saw Reads with Rachel talk about Caraval. If Reads with Rachel hates a book 9 times out of 10, I am also going to hate the book. Unfortunately, this rang true. I did not read Caraval because I watched Rachel talk about Caraval and the sequel, and I know she's going to talk about the last book too. It just didn't seem like something I was going to be interested in. It didn't seem like a young adult book that I was going to enjoy as an older person as I'm on my whole journey of revisiting teen and YA media that missed me the first time around, that, you know, I can go back and go, okay, that was a good time. I could see what the hype is about. It's not something that interested me, but I was interested in Once Upon a Broken Heart because the hype for it is just so big. And the third book is about to come out in October. And so I was like, okay, like I'll read this and then maybe like the second one. And I really liked the idea of it, but it was just so poorly executed. It's not that I'm saying that you need to read Caraval in order to understand what's going on, but I wish that they would be more direct about whether or not you should, because I walked into this thinking, oh, you don't have to read Caraval. Like I can skip it entirely because it's going to be too juvenile for me, or it's not going to be for me because I'm older now and I just don't have the nostalgia attached to the story. So I can read like the adult entry of this universe, right? Wrong. So I was not feeling it. I didn't like Stephanie Garber's writing at all. I didn't like her characterizations. The main characters of Evangeline and Jax having pink hair and blue hair respectively is so heteronormative it hurts. Like it didn't occur to me until later, but also they're the only characters that canonically have like funky colored hair. So they're just anime protagonists, which I thought was a little goofy. I just didn't like the world building. None of it really made any sense to me. The plot was just nowhere. I didn't understand where the plot was going at any point. And then it had one of those like surprise there are vampires situations, but it didn't need vampires. In fact, the fact that it added vampires made it worse. Honestly, if it didn't add the vampires, I might have rated it like a 2.5 stars, but it just got really convoluted and dumb, and it didn't make any sense to me, and I don't understand the hype about this at all. I really wanted to at least have a compliment to say about the prose, because Carrie did talk about how Stephanie Garber has really colorful and vivid and imaginative prose, and I did not see it, so I'm a little bit disappointed in that. At the 90% mark, Evangeline Fox says to the antagonist, "I'm just a girl with pink hair." And honestly, that's a pretty good one sentence description of what this book is about. I was not moved, I did not stir, I did not smile, I did not chuckle. It was one of those book experiences where I was just kind of like this the entire time, where like this was my face. I'll insert the memes here that I posted on Twitter, but this was like my face like the entire time. And that's not usually a good sign. I tweeted when I reached the 12% mark that I believe Stephanie Garber put crack in this book and I was not getting addicted. And that remains very true. Again, it was just not for me. It is a very popular book, but it was definitely not for me. So you're free to enjoy the things that you do, because I know I sure have some favorites that other people don't like very much. I rest my case. Anyways, that is all from me. Thank you so much for hanging out with me if you got to the end of this video. If you'd like to find me anywhere else, you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Remember to drink water and be nice to each other and exude kindness and empathy with everything that you do. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.